Enjoying the weekend as hot as it may be. We're actually going to start out with a look at radar across much of the south this afternoon. A lot of our neighbors picking up on some of those afternoon showers and storms, but for the most part we're staying dry in the natural state. The big story continues to be the heat, but let's look at that radar right quick across the south. You see off to our east along the east coast there's some severe weather happening across portions of Virginia and North Carolina, but again closer to home, staying dry. Some of southern Arkansas picking up on some stray rain showers. There is a marginal flood risk in that part of the state today, but definitely looking to not see much coverage or impact with that. The main impact that we're tracking, which is why we're here to talk today, is the summer heat. We're in what people will call the dog days of summer, where every day the story is, oh, it's hot and it's humid. And I know that could sound like a broken record, but these impacts are serious. That's why we want to make sure you're equipped with everything you need to know to stay safe over the next couple of days. So currently there is a extreme heat warning in effect through 8 o'clock this evening. We also have a THV 11 weather impact alert in effect through this evening at 8 o'clock. But we have issued another THV 11 weather impact alert for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So the next 5 days. We'll talk about why that's the case as we continue through the next couple of slides, but that's because what we're seeing today is going to be the trend for a couple days, and it's likely that it'll even feel a little bit hotter around that middle week point of the new week as those temperatures climb and we still keep those dew points in the middle 70s. Here's a look at that map of those heat alerts that are in effect for today. Again, all the heat alerts in effect from noon to 8 p.m. so now through 8 p.m. As you see, Pulaski County locations north and east of this along the I-57 corridor under that extreme heat warning, and those areas shaded in that magenta expect heat indices as high as 110 this afternoon. We'll look at those current heat indices in a second, but areas immediately surrounding that, so some of north central Arkansas, the Arkansas River Valley, and some of south central Arkansas under that heat advisory, heat indices up to 105 for those shaded counties. But even if you're not under any heat alert today, you probably stepped outside thinking, man, it's very hot. Here's a look at tomorrow's heat alerts, very similar to today, but more of the state included in that. Here's those current heat indices. So it's feeling like 102 in the capital city. Same story in Stuttgart, Pine Bluff, Arkadelphia, feeling like 103 and 104. As you look towards northeast Arkansas, though, that's where we're seeing the hottest and most humid conditions. Searcy with a feels like of 109 right now. Jonesboro with a feels like of 110. But again, even those parts of the state that aren't under any warnings right now or heat alerts right now, El Dorado down to our south with a feels like of 102. Even Fayetteville, Harrison, and Mountain Home to our north and west, still with those feels like of the middle to upper 90s. Across the south, we're definitely seeing the bullseye of some of those highest heat indices across some of the natural state and locations directly south for our neighbors in Louisiana. So that kind of puts into a visual perspective where that heat dome is settling up for the days ahead. You hear us talk about the heat dome a lot this time of year. That's the upper level pattern when we get that upper level high pressure that gives us those long stretch of days where it's just sunny, hot, and it brings in a little bit of a humidity based off of where we are in the country. But again, seeing some of the highest heat indices along that Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana border, Texarkana and Shreveport clocking feels like of 105. And we still got about an hour, maybe 90 minutes of peak afternoon heating to go before things start to cool down as we approach sunset. Even over in Mississippi, 103 is the feels like in Greenville, 101 for our neighbors down I-40 in Memphis. Even Alabama picking up 100-degree feels like in Montgomery. So everybody is trying to beat the heat on this Saturday. We've got those swampy dew points in effect across much of the south. This is going to be part of why those heat indices stay so high over the next couple of days, because with that upper level ridge, we're going to get ample sunshine That moisture coming off the Gulf of Mexico, especially this time of year, just giving us that tropical air, and it's not going to be the most comfortable, especially when you start to see afternoon temperatures peaking around that 100-degree mark. So definitely swampy dew points across much of the south. Of course, we're seeing the highest dew points indicated by that pink shading color into northeast Arkansas, closer towards Tennessee, North Mississippi, and Alabama. That's where we have those extreme heat warnings extending from today. That also kind of gives you another visual perspective of where the ingredients are matching up to see the most impactful heat today. Now, as we continue through the afternoon, I told you we've got more heating to go. Looking to see a peak heat index around 105 in the capital city. Searcy, Jonesboro, locations we pointed out earlier, looking to get up to 109, 110. To our south, El Dorado, looking to see more of the same of what you're currently seeing, which is still very hot. So don't discredit the fact that there are no heat alerts from our location. You still want to keep heat safety at the top of your mind, especially over the days ahead. We're getting to that time of year with that moisture. Overnight, we're not getting much relief from the heat. During the afternoons, we're definitely not getting any relief from the heat. This is what those heat indices look like for the next 7 days. Tomorrow, probably similar to today, maybe a few degrees cooler when you talk about the heat index, but into the start of the work week, back on the rise, and definitely that middle point of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, even Thursday into Friday, we're seeing those heat indices climbing even higher. So extreme heat warnings may be prompted again over the days ahead. Definitely looks like we could see some more heat advisories over the days ahead. I'll show you another map in a second talking about the heat risk for each day. That's a new forecast that comes from the Weather Prediction Center. But I want to show you towards the end of the week where those heat indices get a little bit higher. That's because we're going to have a couple of days where we make a run for 100 degrees. So tomorrow into Monday, looks like we could still hang on to the upper 90s, but we'll get pretty doggone close to the triple digits. And some of our neighbors in cities like Pine Bluff or Camden or down in Monticello, you could knock on the 100-degree door between Sunday or Monday. But once we get to that middle part of the week, that becomes more probable for more of central Arkansas as a heat dome takes over. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 consecutive days where it looks like the capital city could record a 100-degree day. So far this summer, we have not done that yet. So Tuesday could be the first if this forecast holds true. And we talk about with these weather impact alerts, we issue those for the extreme heat warnings or for the 100-degree day, which is why we have this new one going in effect for the next couple of days, because even Sunday and Monday, upper 90s, still with the swampy dew points that we saw just a second ago. Definitely going to feel more of the same, maybe peaking a little bit higher once we get into those days where temperatures actually do climb to the triple digits. Here is that heat risk map I was telling you about that comes from the Weather Prediction Center. Today, you see there's that level 3 out of 4 or high heat risk for some of central Arkansas, so portions of Pulaski County, Faulkner County, down into Lonoke Prairie, and then it climbs up into northeast Arkansas, with the rest of the state under that moderate to minor heat risk. Now, this just kind of puts together those factors of the feels like the actual air temperature, the amount of moisture in the air, what that means for your body and its natural cooling processes, and it gives you kind of this outlook of this risk, similar to when we have those severe weather risks where we talk about the marginal or the slight risk. This is something similar to that, but in regards to the heat. You'll notice as we look for tomorrow, more of that high risk starting to extend into southeastern Arkansas or even some of west central Arkansas. So do not be surprised if we see maybe at least heat advisories tomorrow that extend across more of those counties that maybe didn't see any heat alerts today. Into Monday, even more of southeast Arkansas starting to get into the Mississippi Delta under that level 3 out of 4 or high risk. At this point, Monday afternoon, definitely looking at the northeastern half of the state, seeing some of the highest heat indices, temperatures a little bit warmer, dew points definitely a little bit higher in this part of the state. By Tuesday, this is when we start to sprinkle in a little bit of that extreme category or level 4 out of 4, still primarily across those east central Arkansas counties. So thinking about Monroe County down into Arkansas County, even up to our northeast. Wednesday, starting to see a little bit more of that into central Arkansas. Definitely Thursday, not as much of that extreme risk. So that kind of tells you Tuesday into Wednesday, likely going to be some of the days where it may feel the hottest. We're going to probably see some of the highest temperatures, but into Thursday, we still see some of that high risk. And as you saw a second ago from those heat indices, we're still not going to get much relief as we approach next weekend. And the culprit for this, well, that's the heat dome that I keep talking about. This is what it looks like in the middle part of the atmosphere above our heads when we talk about upper level ridging or that high pressure. It centers itself right over the central United States, creating kind of a dome of heat. Now you'll see if you pay attention to national forecasts over the next week, we may see stories about storms and rain coming from our neighbors circling around the heat dome. So Salt Lake City, Rapid City, up to Minneapolis and around over to Washington, oftentimes those disturbances travel around the outline of that heat dome, while the people inside the dome keep seeing that sunshine, the heat, the humidity, and just that brutal summer weather that we often talk about. So it's not just going to be us feeling that heat dome. Our friends in Illinois, our friends to our south in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even a good chunk of Texas is going to feel the impacts. And over to our west, Oklahoma and Kansas looking to feel the impacts. So everybody definitely trying to beat the heat over the next couple of days. And the Climate Prediction Center also echoing that this is the latest 6 to 10 day outlook. A lot of those states I just named kind of under that bullseye where it's showing that trend of, okay, above average temperatures are expected. And of course, above average is relative to what the average high is for your location. But I could tell you here in the capital city, average high as we get to the end of July is around 92, 93 degrees. So what this map is telling us is, hey, likely going to see some days where the temperatures are higher than that. You saw that a second ago. We're tracking a couple of days where we could be in the triple digits. So definitely a lot of different sources matching up with their forecast. That's why we've issued the THV 11 weather impact alert. Was already one in effect today until 8 o'clock. But as we look towards Sunday and planning for the week ahead, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, going to be under this impact alert from afternoon to evening. So similar to today, the time frame of maybe noon to 8 o'clock, because that's when we really get into that peak afternoon heating. That's when you need to make sure you're putting a little more extra care into taking care of yourself or your kids, especially if you're spending time outside. I know as we prepare for back to school, a lot of those kids that might be on these sports teams are doing their training for the fall season ahead, making sure they have ample things to stay hydrated, the Gatorades, the water, when you can take those breaks to get under the shade or really just go inside under the air, especially also those people that may work outside for a living, or, you know, this is also the time of year, make sure you're checking in on your neighbors that may be vulnerable, elderly neighbors, you know, with children, making sure you're looking after them during this time of year as well. Heat indices up to 110 or even 115 once we get towards Tuesday and Wednesday are going to be possible over the next couple of days, which is why, again, we've been emphasizing so much the importance of heat safety. Make sure you're staying hydrated, take those breaks. Also important to remember to dress coolly this time of year, lightweight, loose-fitting clothing you often hear people say. But another hack you don't really hear people talk about a lot is the material of your clothing and the color of your clothing as well. When you wear those dark colors, that absorbs a little more of that heat from the sun versus light colors, those pastels, those whites, that reflects the light a little bit, and it can also offer a little bit of a cooling effect there. But, you know, just another tidbit to leave you with, you know, when we talk about these long stints of high temperatures and what that means for impacts to the body. Also another reason to make sure you're being extra cautious when you're leaving and going into your car, especially if you're traveling with folks. We're looking to see a couple of days where it could be 100 degrees. In just 10 minutes, you're already up to 119 with that temperature inside your car. After 30 minutes, that's 134. After an hour, you've seen the inside of your car rise 140 degrees. Obviously, we were talking about 100 degrees does not feel the best. We see those heat alerts around 115. So inside a car that's not turned on after an hour, it's well beyond that, which could bring some pretty intense impacts. So here is just an overview of the week ahead. Again, not much relief coming from the heat today. Honestly, just a teaser for what's to come tomorrow into Monday. Probably going to feel pretty similar in regards to Temperatures in the upper 90s. When you factor in these dew points in the middle 70s, it's going to feel like the triple digits. So likely going to see more of those heat alerts tomorrow into Monday, but the middle part of the work week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we got a little extra concern for that because you see the afternoon temperature looking to make it to the 100-degree mark. And with those dew points consistent with what we've been seeing in the weekend, likely going to feel even hotter. You saw from that map a second ago, extreme or level 4 out of 4 heat risk issue from the Weather Prediction Center. And even though Friday and Saturday maybe aren't shaded in red, still seeing those temperatures hover in the middle 90s, dew points maybe in more of the lower 70s, still not going to be the most comfortable. So we're definitely in the dog days of summer, that time of year where you just got to make sure you're keeping heat safety at the top of mind and you're staying hydrated, maybe even eating more foods that are hydrating to help, keep you healthy all around. We got a couple more minutes left before we say goodbye. Let's bring back up radar across much of the South because, again, not much happening in the natural state, but some of southern Arkansas has the opportunity for a marginal or level 1 out of 4 flood risk, and we can even pull up that map in a second. I'll play this for you while I pull up that flood map for you, and that's the last thing we can leave on. So heat alerts in effect today, extreme heat warning for Pulaski County with the heat advisories for locations across central Arkansas. Again, that's in effect through 8 p.m. this evening. Here is the flood risk today. I do think the date on it might be incorrect, but this is today's flood risk if you'll give it a second to load. So for areas south and east of the Little Rock Metro, marginal flood risk. As you close in on the Mississippi River, there is that slight flood risk, but as you saw a second ago, not much rain is actually happening across the natural state today. Right now, we've got some rain happening down in Union County towards El Dorado. Most of the rain staying to our south and east in Mississippi and Louisiana, but there is the opportunity for a stray shower or storm to bubble up for that part of the state today. And again, those storms at most could produce that lightning, which we always talk about as a hazard this time of year, and could produce some heavy downpours that could lead to that flooding concern. We talked a lot about the heat over the next couple days when we haven't talked much about this rain because we have been seeing more of these afternoon thunderstorms. That might not be as much of a concern over the next couple days as much as the heat will. Definitely why we're looking to see those temperatures get a little bit higher, because there's not much of the chance there for those clouds to offer any shade or the clouds to even offer any rain. I think as we close in on next week, and you saw on that 7-day, as we close in on next weekend, we start to see the opportunity for an isolated shower or storm entering the forecast. So definitely the low end chance of a pop-up shower or storm, but most places definitely staying dry. It's just the heat and humidity over the next couple of days, and then into next weekend we'll see more of those afternoon summer thunderstorms that, as we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, can produce those gusty winds, those heavy downpours, and the lightning. Here's one more check-in of your map for today's heat alerts. Hopefully, if you can join us this evening at 6 o'clock. We'll be talking more about this again. If you were unable to catch this stream in its entirety, we'll be talking more about the heat risk over the next couple of days at 6 o'clock. But here's those alerts that are in effect for today. Through 8 o'clock, we've got the extreme heat warning for Pulaski County and locations north and east of that along that I-57 corridor, and then locations surrounding that. I'm talking north central Arkansas, the Arkansas River Valley, even as far south as Jefferson County, Grant County. We've got that heat advisory. So going to continue to see temperatures on the rise at least for the next hour or so, and then as we approach sunset, things start to cool down. Cool being relative because we're not going to get much relief overnight. But if you join us again at 6, we'll talk a little bit more about that this evening. And if you can't make it at 6, at 10 o'clock, I'll have your 11-day outlook where we'll talk about how soon, if soon at all, we'll get any relief from this heat. Spoiler alert, it doesn't look like it. But we'll talk more about what's to come over the next couple days. In the meantime, make sure you're staying safe this weekend. Hopefully you're having a good time while you're staying safe, and we'll check back in again soon.